So now we're going to explore the relationship of the key, the finger, the hand, the arm, and the body. And so uh, it's a sensory exercise which will change your sense of self, your experience of yourself while you're even beginning to play the piano. So for starters, I don't need to hear your sound, but would you please just play a few notes? We're going to take some little piece that you play, or a little scale, or just a chord or something, whatever, so that I can see how your hand is when you play, how your arm is when you play, and how your sitting is when you play. Just play away and let me take a look. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right. So the fingers are moving the keys, the hands are on top of the fingers, the arms connect the hands to the body, so there's this two-way experience. So now, would you please now take your hands, let your hands lie in your lap, either on your thigh or somewhere in your lap, and notice as you're sitting, can you feel your two sits bones on the chair that you're sitting on? And do they feel the same? Or is actually one sits bone pressing into the chair a little more than the other one? And is one sits bone pressing into the chair a little more behind or a little more in front of the actual nethermost point of the sits bone than the other one? So if one sits bone is pressing more than the other, then presumably the weight of your body is a little bit more over that sits bone than the other. And if one sits bone is a little more forward or a little more back than the other, then that means the body is actually twisted a little bit left or right. But you may not have noticed that before. And now, uh, move the body like a half a millimeter, so that the relationship of the two sits bones shifts. So maybe if they're unequal, they'll be even more unequal, but very slightly so, or if they might become a little more equal. So we're not rocking the body to actually lift one sits bone off the chair or lift the other sits bone off the chair, but keeping both of them on the chair, but subtly changing the vertical relationship of your spine to the one sits bone and the other sits bone, leaving your spine with a sense of being in between the two of them the whole time. But if you'll notice that if one time you go microscopically more on one sits bone and then microscopically more on the other sits bone, the feeling of the spine changes, and perhaps the spine becomes a little rounder or a little straighter in some part or other. So if you just explore the sense of where am I in relation to those two sits bones, and the more microscopic you make those changes, the more the torso starts to transform. It starts to let go a little bit here, or just relax a little bit there, or fill out a little bit over here. Can you sense any of those changes going on as you simply attend to, oh, where am I now? Where am I now? It's very peculiar because you're sitting there, and if you really attend to it, the two sits bones, even if you don't do anything, don't do doodly squat, if you really attend to them, you'll notice that there are microscopic changes going on like in the actual number of pounds, ounces, and hundredths of ounces each sits bone is bearing at any particular point in time. And it seems like you think you're sitting there immobile, but actually internally, all sorts of micro adjustments are happening all the time. Normally, it's outside of awareness, but how do you change? What changes in you, and in your sense of sitting, and in your sense of either verticality or roundedness, forwardness or backwardness, simply by attending to the sense of your central part of yourself, your spine, that inner central column, balanced over the two sits bones, in between them, and subtly trying to figure out with more and more precision just how do I relate, I meaning my spine, to one sits bone and the other, and how do I float in between them. And having done that, and stay attentive to your inner state, your sits bones, and now bring your hands to the keyboard and play just as you did before, but notice if it's any different. Now play the way you did before, but constantly feeling your sits bones in your body. Do your hands move differently? Does the piano sound differently? What has changed? Great. And again, put your hands in your lap and notice whether you're sitting differently from a few minutes ago. Now, this time, think about this a little bit before you do it. I'm going to describe it. So this time, you bring the hands to the piano, but don't do it yet. But listen, bring the hands to the piano, but don't play. Instead, just allow the heels of your hands and the palms of your hands to melt into the keys, so that they actually sink. The heels of the hands. So the heels of the hands have to be on the white keys. And now bring your hands there. And as you do it, what changes in your sitting? And you bring the heels forward until they're comfortably supported on the white keys. The wrists are not hanging off the piano. The wrists are lying there, supported by the heel of the hand and the white keys. Okay, so what changed in your sitting? Did you move forward on your sits bones, or did you move backwards on your sits bones, or did you stay exactly perched on the same part of your sits bones? Okay, bring the hands back to the lap and try that one again. So bring your hands to the lap. Notice where you're sitting when you're in total neutral, and notice what happens to that neutrality as you go to the piano, as the hands get onto the keys, as they come forward and then eventually melt into the keys. And you'll notice there isn't just one change. And you notice if you attend to each millimeter of movement as you come off. Okay, I'm starting to come off. My heels are starting to slide out of the white keys. Now my fingers are on the white keys. And there's something going on in your torso the whole time. Can you feel that? What is changing? Not just the difference between the beginning and the ending position, but all the changes along the way. As soon as you begin to move your hands towards the keys, your body, you'll notice your sits bones are in action. Your body's in action. And then the hands melt into the keys. And even from the surface of the keys to the melting into the depths of the keys, there's a change in your torso. So now leave your hands, your palms, your heels melted in the depths of the white keys. Then stay there, but allow the keys to push your hands up to the surface. The hands stay in contact with the key surface, but now the keys are going to rise until they're at their own at-rest position. What changed in your body? And now again, let the hands be heavy so the keys sink down. What changed in your body? Again, let the keys push. The keys want to come up. So all you do is you let them come up, but you see something in the body has to change just to let those keys start to come up. And there's 12 millimeters between the key as far down as it can go and the at rest position. So that's quite a large distance. And what happens in the body as your heels are being lifted up to the surface by those keys? And what happens in the body as the heels become heavier and become heavier? And the keys start to go down, and the keys start to go down, and more keys go down. And then they hit bottom, and there's your heels melted on the bottom of the key bed. Well, all the stuff that went on in your torso while you were doing that. So keep going at your own speed, and I'll shut up and I'll watch. That's it. So there may be so little movement that hardly anything is visible, and yet there's a profound sense of, maybe, I don't know if connection is the right word, of relation, of response, of a synchronous activity that just the fact, the simple, the simple experience of the hands in relation to a key changes profoundly what's going on in the body. Yeah. So again, let all that go, let the hands slide off the keys and come to rest your arms on your lap. And notice again what's changed in your sitting. And now, would you make just one sound or two sounds, play just one note or two notes or three notes, just a few notes with one of your hands on the piano. So I'll play a note, I'll play another note, I'll play another note. You don't imitate me, just do whatever you like. And notice the sound of that note, notice the sonority of the note. Notice, did the note sound clunky? Did it sound pure? Was it a fat note or a thin note? Was it an aggressive note or a gentle note? And Lilu, do you have a pedal on your electric keyboard? Do you have something where you can and let the sound continue to? Oh, you don't. Oh dear. Oh dear. You'll have to do this again. You'll have to look at this recording and do it again when you can have a pedal, because what we're going to do now is. But you'll also get something from this from doing it without the pedal. So now with the arm back on the lap, and this time, would you imagine that your forearm is getting the same arm, just one of them. The forearm is getting lighter and lighter and lighter, as if it's getting filled up with helium until it starts to float off your lap and float just up into the air until your hand is about the level of your chin. And let it come back down, let it come back down. What happened to your sitting? Because you're only doing one arm, did your body go to one side? Did it go more onto one sits bone than the other? What happened to your shoulder blade? Did that shoulder blade get farther away from the spine as you lifted your forearm, as your forearm floated up? Or did it get closer, or did it just stay where it was? Would you put your other hand, the hand that's not moving now, on your clavicle? So, yeah, so let's say if you're doing your left arm, then your right hand will go on the left clavicle. And now float that forearm up again. Fill the forearm with helium, float it, and feel how the clavicle moves. And then float it down, deflate the helium forearm until it's resting on, and feel how the clavicle moves. How is the clavicle moving? If you do it very slowly, you'll start to feel more and more, with more and more detail, where that clavicle goes when the forearm gets light and filled with helium. And back down again. Where does the clavicle go? Great. Now this time, float the forearm, float the forearm, float the forearm. And on the way down, would you simply, by accident, the finger gets in contact with a key. That's right. That's so cool. And keep going. Yeah, so if your finger had no mind of its own and just by accident it got in contact with the key and your arm kept deflating, then the finger would sort of crumple and then it would uncrumple and eventually slide off the key. And you would end up in your lap. That's right. Do that very slowly. Even slower than that, Lilu, if you can. Especially from the point that you get contact, and then slow down, and keep going. And now, so was there any tendency for the finger to kind of clench, to kind of grab the key, or did it stay completely passive? Because generally when we play the piano, we will fixate the finger somehow. We will grab that key somehow. But this exercise is designed to simply to ferret out those micro little contractions and these little tiny grabbings. Feldenkrais called them parasitic contractions. So that if you're aware of them, then they can melt away and not happen. uh, take a break and just come back to your sitting again and notice, is there a difference in sensation between your left arm and your right arm, between the arm that was doing this strange floating down into the key. This is taken from the introduction of Floating Arm, and the piece which is eventually going to be played where you're doing this movement while you play is called Elegant Alliance. Yeah. So you'll notice with your students and maybe with yourself as well that there was a kind of a catching. And the whole idea of this exercise is to find out how to let a finger come in contact with key without any parasitic contraction. So it literally just crumples, and then it literally just uncrumples, and the floating down of the arm is completely smooth and uninterrupted. There are no kinks in the movement, no segmentation. There you go. And the slower you go, the more you may uncover little tiny, the physiologists call it ratcheting. It's a quality of movement that cerebral palsy patients have sometimes. Of course, Moshe Feldenkrais said we all suffer more or less from cerebral palsy because he could find parasitic contractions in anyone, this kind of ratcheting. So this is a chance to uncover hidden little tiny ratchetings in your finger and hand and arm that you didn't know were there. And maybe they're not. Maybe you're doing this beautifully and it's just smooth and that's lovely and it's still a wonderful experience. But if you uncover that kind of tendency to grip, then it's a chance to give your hand a different experience of itself. And now, doing it with the other hand, do you notice that there's a difference between the right and the left? And in the majority of people, there will be more of that ratcheting kind of feeling in the right hand than in the left. Because, of course, pianists' right hands are way more stressed out than their left hands. So if you'd speed this movement up just a tiny bit, then a note actually sounds. And if you have a pedal on your piano, then you leave the note on the pedal even when your hand is back in your lap. And notice, did the experience of actually sounding a note evoke more ratcheting feelings in your hand? When you knew, oh my God, now I'm not just doing an exercise, now I'm actually going to play a note. Did that change your entire psychology? Did it change your entire relationship to the keys? And if it did, then again, try again and use this experience, this chance to slow it down and float, and sing, and trick your mind. I'm not playing the piano. I'm not playing the piano. I'm just letting my arm float down, and my hand is collapsing, crumpling, and then uncrumpling. My French translator has a horrible time with this word crumple, because all she can find is like the crumpling, like if a car crashes, then the bodies of the two cars crumple. Or if you crumple a piece of paper, you crumple the piece of paper up. And of course, this is way more passive and way more gentle. But when I think about it in English, I don't even know of a crumpling that is this gentle as I want this crumpling to be. Very peculiar, this question of language. That's different now. That's different, Lilu. That's way different from the first time. Yes, Amy?
Tissue paper, maybe.
Tissue paper?
Crumpling.
Yeah, as if the tissue paper that is so thin that it can crumple itself. It just crumples itself instead of somebody crumpling it. That's very good, Amy. I'm going to tell Evelyn that. That's very good. Yeah. So do one and then hand and then do the other hand and compare. Having done this several times and explored it a little bit, are they becoming more dissimilar or more similar? And when you're ready, you take a break. Again, rest your hands in your lap and just see whether your hands feel more or less dissimilar from a few minutes ago, and whether your sitting has changed again, because I forgot to ask you to keep in touch not only with this quite sensorially complex movement of the arm and moving the finger, not it's moving the finger through a key. It's as if the key is a tunnel and the finger just went through it. And I forgot to ask you to keep track of your two sits bones in your torso while you were doing all that. But of course, you did it even though I forgot to ask you. Ah, great. So, for this introduction, I figured that many people are going to, they're going to notice this kind of ratcheting thing. So, one form of learning is to actually do the mistake on purpose. So, there are a number. When I taught this at first, I saw people doing a number of so-called mistakes. They were doing it different from what I said. So I made each one of them into a piece. So the first one is to, instead of letting the finger just crumple and then uncrumple, somehow people came down and they got very horizontal, and then they played the note when the note was horizontal. So you could try it now. So come down, and instead of crumpling the finger, somehow have it conspire that the finger flattens itself out until the entire underside of the finger is in contact with a key, either a black key or a white key or two white keys, and then eventually you could even play more than one note. That's right. And this time you come up the same way. Yeah. And actually you could do it so that the hand kind of horizontalizes itself as soon as the fingertip comes in contact with the key surface. The fingertip does not move the key. As soon as the key surface is touched ever so gently, then the whole hand becomes horizontal, and then that finger lies down in the key. The finger literally lies down in the key. And from there, you can either slide off the key into your lap, or you could lie down and then just float up again. And that brought us to lazy lions. So here you see lions who are actually lying down in the key. And of course, Lucky the cat, who's got an alarm clock, he's just about to wake them up. But he didn't do it yet because he's a nice cat. So how does your arm behave differently when you lie down in the key like this? Now try to get the entire flat of the finger, not just the fingertip. So when we come down, Lilu, it's like all of the underside of the finger is going to lie down. Like you see this lion, the whole lion is lying down in the key, not just the lion's paws. So it's like all of the finger lies down. And then you could actually, as a variation, you could even just ride the key up inside. So I'm lying down, and again the key is pushing my finger up, and I'm lying down again and playing a note. And I let the key push like as if the key could lift the lion up. And now, oh, the lion got heavy. Oh, now the lion got lighter and the key pushed it up, and now he got heavy again. Like that. So it's quite a specific, very, very gentle, establishing relationship with all three finger bones and the key. Establishing relationship between all three finger bones and the key. And then you try it with another finger. And then you try it with another finger. And noticing differences in the sensation, even if you go from one finger to another.
Mine doesn't sound. How do you make it sound?
Then you just, I'm moving my wrist and my forearm down a little faster. Ah, aha. But your wrist is look at this wrist movement. You see my wrist movement is actually disconnecting my hand from my arm. And now as my wrist comes down, my whole hand and my whole forearm comes down. Look. And when my look all it's not just the wrist coming down, it's the wrist and the forearm and the hand all coming down together. And then that kind of clamps. You see I can actually clamp the underside of my finger to the key. And if you speed that up a little, you should get a sound. Clamp, clamp. Your wrist, you see, Amy, this is so great. Your wrist is way too loose. You see, your
Yeah.
wrist is like this. There's no clamping because the energy is going off into the void above the wrist or below the wrist. But for the clamp to happen, the energy has to go through the wrist from the forearm into the hand. And you see, it's a unit. It's clamping like this. It's clamping like this. It's not clamping. This is
You're
no
not,
clamp. Look, how
you're
can this
not
clamp?
raising,
What?
you're not raising the hand by,
Okay, we're doing a sub variation of the exercise. We started like this with a wrist totally let go, and then it came to the horizontal. So now we're just going to stay in that horizontal moment and relatively solidify the hand and the arm to make a kind of a clamp. Simply because we want the note to sound. And you said to me, the note doesn't sound. So, oh, now we have to create a new variation in this exercise. This one that we're doing now, this clamping, that's not in the book. But it's very good that you brought it up because you see, we can always create a variation that's going to allow us to address our particular organization. And no, that's too heavy, Amy. That's way too heavy.
huh,
You're falling into the key. Don't fall into the key. Just float down with a kind of a solid hand arm to gently, ever so gently, clamp the underside of the finger to the key. You
okay.
see, you're way too loose. The forces cannot get through your skeletal structure into the finger, into the flat of the finger, because there's all this looseness here. Why? From years and years and years of being told to relax and to be loose when you play the piano. But of here, we need to use the skeletal structure in a different way. That's way better, Amy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's nothing to do with a weighted touch. You're not falling and gone. You're floating down in order to clamp. And the clamp is just kind of the muscles kind of galvanize. They just there's this internal kind of a contraction that does not change the angle of any of the joints. See, I'm here. I'm going to do one hand on the other hand so you can see it. I'm here. Oh, now I'm flattening out. Okay, now I'm here, and I don't change any angles. I just I do my muscles. My muscles inside go like this, and then I'm clamped to the key.
Hmm.
Yeah. And now Lilu clamp. There you go. That's it. It's a very gentle movement. It's subtle, and yet there's a certain potency in it. How can I say? That's it. Great. That's so interesting. See, every time I teach this, it goes in a different direction. It's so cool. Even that's too much wrist, Amy. That's very good, Lilu. Yeah, that's really good, Lilu. Yeah. So you see, each of us has our own individual organization. Some of us are too tight, some of us are too loose. And these exercises will bring each of us more to a viable, functional movement relationship with our instrument. So the overly loose person will actually need to firm up the structure. Yeah, as you know, the shoulder joint it's not a ball and socket where the ball is in the socket. The socket is almost flat. And if the muscles did not hold that ball gently in the socket, it would dislocate. So some of us are too loose. Some of us are almost at the point of the wrist joints or the finger joints. They're going to dislocate. They're just like this. and they need to be snug. You can't do this on yourself, but sometimes in an FI, that's a functional integration lesson, I will simply take the hand and compress it into the forearm and show those 8 wrist bones. This is your place. This is your place. You can be nice and snug. And the nervous system gets that. And then the nervous system figures out a way to move where the wrist is still capable of undulating, but it's not flopping. The floppiness is a lack of control. It's loose to the point of hypermobility, actually. You're not hypermobile, but your nervous system can behave in a manner as if you were hypermobile from a pianist's point of view.
I'm using my left hand to move my
Very
right hand
nice.
down, compressing the wrist back like you did.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
I'll write it down.
Yeah.
It's not in the book, huh?
This one's not in the book. Take a break. Let your hand lie in your lap. I again forgot to ask you to monitor your sitting and your sits bones while you're doing this, but what has changed in your sitting? Are you more or less vertical? Are you rounded or straighter or more forward, more back? Are you more left or more right? Having done this exercise more with one hand or the other. You feel more organic, mobile, a living, breathing, sitting torso, not a bump on a log kind of a torso. And imagine that this is the torso that can play the piano. That every movement on key is, the torso is with the hand, subtly and yet wisely. Another mistake would be to totally stiffen the hand. So now try lifting one arm up and floating it down, and at the moment when the fingertip touches the key is going to go to the bottom, and at this point totally stiffen your structure so that you can't go any farther, and then come back out again. So light, 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 solidify, come out, desolidify. Touch, solidify, desolidify. Float, float down, touch, solidify.
That's in the book, right?
What?
That's in the book.
That's
Yeah.
pogo stick. That's pogo stick.
I love the desolidifying it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that before.
Yeah, maybe I didn't put the desolidify part in the book.
Okay, I'm going to take a note then.
My bad. Yeah. And so the piece is called the pogo stick, and on for the notes of this piece, I wrote a accent and a staccato mark. So it's like solidify, come out, and actually. And the last one you solidify and stay. So it's an accent and a staccato. So, that's very good, Lilu. It's amazing. I know how it sounds even though your microphone is off. I can see from the way, the physical way you're interacting with the key. I can hear exactly how it sounds. It's very cool. Yeah, so this is great because you're both doing it in a very sensorial way, very slow and sensing every little bit, and then there's a sudden galvanization of the finger into a pretty solid form, but you're doing it slowly so you can feel all the subtle little changes in the muscles that create that moment of solidity, and then it lets go again. So it's very, very nice. In fact, this is one of the few exercises which really combines the sensorial and the structural in an interesting way. It's got a little bit of both. So the next variation, another one of the so-called mistakes, but you see we're learning from our mistakes. It's a tightrope walker. So instead of pogo sticking, going bong, 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 we're going to walk on a tightrope. So it's the same thing done pianissimo, but the advanced version of this, we actually walk on a tightrope and we go, and we actually repeat the note. But the finger stays hanging. There's no finger crumpling. We actually use the forearm. That's right, Lilu. Very good. Make sure it's just the forearm, that the hand is totally passive, and the finger, that's right. And when you repeat the note, try to keep the fingertip in touch with the key surface. No air between the finger and the key surface, in between the three notes. That's it. That's very different feeling, is it not? And what's going on in your sitting? Did your sitting rigidify to control your arm like this? Or can you keep yourself subtly rocking on your sits bones as your arm floats down and you tightrope walk on one key, or you tightrope walk on another key, or you tightrope walk on another key? I'm almost a Russian baritone.
So are you desolidifying between each note?
No time.
Uh,
Yeah. I think a tiny little bit of desolidification happens just by accident, but I don't consciously do it. I just jiggle, and I'm not really solidified here. I'm just, you see, I'm just solid enough. I'm just solid enough so that my finger does not crumple. See, watch. I'm gonna come down, and the finger's gonna crumple. So I'm gonna avoid that crumpling, but I didn't solidify as much as I did in the pogo stick. I just solidified just enough to move the key and leave the finger loose, actually, but not crumple the finger. So it's a much more subtle degree of solidification. Very good question. You got great questions today, Amy. Great. Lilu.
I was going to say, because this middle finger is longer than the others, it seems to be the one that's been doing all the work, but I just
That's right.
noticed you
I-
just tucked yours under and used your
Yeah,
forefinger that last time.
You're absolutely right. I do my third finger too for all of these, and then I realized, oh my god, I better try the other fingers. And so you see, yeah, that third finger, it just sort of got out of the way. Or if
Yeah.
you're doing your fourth, then the third has to get out of the way somehow. You're absolutely right. And I didn't put that in the book
Variation.
either.
It's like a variation that we must do.
Yeah.
Not like I had to do something else with the other finger.
Yeah, I didn't put that in the book either, but it's good that you picked up on it. Great. Now, so those are all the rest. Take a rest for a moment and look with your hands in your lap and just see again. Any further? It's so interesting because when I teach this, every time I teach this, when I say take a break and check out, every step along the way, my sits bones change. Just from demonstrating with you and explaining to you what to do, and my sits bones are going, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. I could be on that part of the under part of my sits bone, or, oh, my body could be here. So there's no limit to improvement. There's this continual evolution, this rich learning which takes place when we enrich the sensory experience. The nervous system loves this. And even a seasoned practitioner loves diving yet again into that world of sensory enrichment and change and learning. So how is it for you now? And you're sitting, your hands feel different, just resting there on your lap from the beginning of the lesson. And do you breathe differently? And are you perched differently on the sits bones from the beginning of the lesson? So now we get to elegant alliance, which is the goal of this whole exercise. So now try again the very first thing you did, which is float the arm up, and then when it comes down, it crumples, the finger crumples, and then the arm keeps going down, and then it uncrumples and eventually falls off the piano. Did it feel very different from the first time you did it? Yeah, wow. It looks different. Yeah. And now do that again, and somehow you don't know how, but you conspire to sound a note as you're doing this. So it's not even tightrope walking, it's certainly not pogo sticking, it's not lying down in the key horizontally like lazy lion, but somehow you sound the note. That's right. And notice, do you sit differently? Is there an effort? Did some effort come into your sitting, or did you just sound the note? You don't know how. And keep everything flowing, keep everything crumpling, uncrumpling, without any parasitic contraction anywhere in the system. And when you're ready, sound that note as if it's a ball bouncing, so that somehow, you don't know how, it sounded twice. Did you crisp up? Did you get stiff? Or did you manage to sound it? And most people will stiffen up to get that second repetition. And then, okay, sure, that's what's going to happen. That's how the nervous system thinks you have to do this. And then is there some way of getting floating down and maybe sound the note a little later, or slow down the wrist movement at the moment of sounding, so that you can sound two notes without stiffening anywhere in any way throughout the system? That's right. But the movement of the arm, not going back up and back down. The movement of the arm is a continuous smooth down. It's an out breath. So that's the one thing. Yeah, that's it. So you get that note repetition in without arresting the movement of the arm. That's the whole point, because this is experientially, I have not said this, but seeing as you're going to be teaching this, or seeing as you're a grown-up, so you like to understand things, that the basic principle is that the fingers sound the notes and that the arm joins the notes. So I give this one at the beginning, which is kind of stupid because it's the most difficult situation when it's a repeated note. If the arm is going sideways, it's very easy to make the arm only sideways, no up and down movement of the arm. Yeah. But now, no arresting the arm's movement as the same note is repeated.
Alan, I'm looking in the book and it says on step 11 of Linus, vibrate the wrist slightly as the fingertip knocks the key loosely, repeating the note.
Ah, my goodness, okay, vibrate the wrist. That's actually for the 4. Watch, I'm going to do 4. So you see my wrist is kind of vibrating, but you see my arm is actually not arrested. If you put your hand on your elbow, that vibration is not the same as arresting the arm movement. Arresting the arm movement, interrupting the arm movement. That wrist vibration is not a segmentation or an interruption of the arm movement. Very good point. And if you're using weight to move the key, it will be impossible. So that's why we start off with 1, and then we go to 2, and we vibrate that wrist for just 2. And when you got that, then you vibrate the wrist for 3. Or
Can you show me the vibrating looks like?
very, very difficult to do without crisping up, without tensing up somewhere in the arm or the wrist or the finger or the hand.
You're starting to, oh, my internet connection is unstable.
That's very good. You see, Lilu, it's like a first approximation. You're exploring and is it this or is it that? And you're kind of tentatively feeling your way and you're not sure, but that's perfect because that's the way we learn. We don't do it perfectly the first time.
I feel like I'm hearing it, and I also feel like I'm doing it. Like I feel like that, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'm doing it.
That's perfect.
It doesn't matter.
That's great. I see you're sort of, it's not, it's tentative, it's like it's new, it's unfamiliar, and yet I feel you're sensing it and doing it. It's actually happening.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I've been doing this for a million, you just whip it off. No, it's like, okay, what is this vibration with the continuous arm movement? What is that? And you're sensing your way. That's really learning.
I can see how this would work very well with children because I feel like I have that neophyte mind right now with my relationship with my hands and my piano since I don't play it a lot.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So leave your, I'll give you some free time. I'll just watch what you're doing now. I want you play around with this. You can play around with any of the 4 variations we did to see, but the continuous, the essential, or the element that's always present is this breathing arm, which is floating as if helium is inflating it, and floating down as if its helium is being let out slowly, not all of a sudden, like a lung that inflates and deflates, like it bellows, very, very gradual. And then the hand and the finger, they actually have to do a number of quite different things. They have to interact with the key in quite a number of different ways. And so you'll discover how much you've been inadvertently weighting your touch. Because what we're going for here is a completely unweighted touch. So the sound is, that's very good. The sound is actually the same as if you just grabbed a key and wiggled it, like grabbed the key edge and wiggled it. There's no weight in that. So now I do the same thing. So it goes dung 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 dung, and it's a completely free sound, a free repetition, because nothing ever interferes with the key's desire to return to its at-rest state. Every time you put a key down, it wants to come back up. That is its lever nature. And when you prevent it from coming back up, you've stopped it being a lever, and you've stopped your finger being a lever too, because now both of you are clamped. And sometimes we do it like the what do you call it, the lazy lion one. But we do it in a certain way to learn something. And now the key wants to always be a lever. So can the arm always be a bellows, and the key always be a lever, and the finger always a simple lever interacting with that key lever. Then it's the ultimate of the finger makes the tone and the arms join the tones. The arm joins the tones even when it's the same tone repeated, if the arm's movement is truly continuous. Yeah. So of course this has got nothing to do with playing piano, but hopefully when you master this you will play the piano differently. I've had several students come to me and say, oh, I'm doing this Chopin Nocturne. Do you think I could use this floating arm exercise for the Chopin Nocturne? Of course. That's what this exercise is designed to not improve your Chopin Nocturne, to transform your Chopin Nocturne. So that finally you really have a complete division of labor. The finger is making that note, and the finger's making that note, but the arm is joining them. And so on and so forth. It's so this arm can transform anything you're doing at the piano. It's how we phrase. It's how we create a cantabile line. It's how we sing lyrically and not just plunk out notes. But it was a question: should I put this at the beginning of the book? Should this be an introduction? Why did you make this difficult? It's really difficult to do this well, as we've just discovered. With my coaching, it was we actually did it well. But can you imagine not having the author of the book coaching you there, and would you succeed so well? So why did I put it at the beginning? It's because, well, for a number of reasons. Because I want this image of the arm floating and the arm creating movement through phrases while the fingers deal with making the notes. I want this image. I want this experience of ourselves in the background for the entire voyage through Pianimals. So it doesn't follow my logic. If my logic is to start lying down like a baby who doesn't get up for a year, and then eventually we'll get up, and then we'll stand and walk, we'll take our first steps, and there's this developmental logic which goes through the whole of Pianimals, and I talk about it in the introduction. But this floating up, this is way ahead. This is much further down the line. So, but I wanted this image. I wanted this image to be there like a background, like a kind of a sort of a possible state of being which could suffuse all my learning.
Yeah, it's making me think about what does happen before a baby walks. A baby breathes. So, I mean, that's the first thing. So maybe this is our lungs.
Well, that's fantastic.
Isn't it beautiful?
Yeah. Oh, you created a logic for my book structure. Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. Yeah, we breathe. That's the first thing we do. Yes.
It just came to me while you were talking. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's how we started the lesson. We started the lesson with our arms breathing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And the other reason I did it was an homage to my teacher, Phil Cohen, whom, as I said in the introduction, was a kind of like the Moshe Feldenkrais of the piano world. He was really and my friend Robin Sarah, she's written a book. She was my sister's best friend, and she was studying with Phil Cohen all through high school, and my sister asked Robin, look, Alan needs a better piano teacher. So Robin was responsible for me going to Phil in the first place. And we both studied with him much later in life as adults as well as back then. And she's written a book about it. And the story of her first lesson, Phil had this girl of 10 years old come in and just do this for the entire lesson. So she goes home. Her mother says, how was your lesson, dear? Oh, it was really interesting. What did you do and what pieces did you learn? Well, we didn't learn any pieces, but we floated our arm down like this, and the mother goes, are you sure you want to study with this guy? Oh yeah, it was really interesting. I want to study with him. Yeah. So she writes very well about it. But so if Phil can do that as a first lesson, then we're going to put this as the first lesson of Pianimals. But Lilu, this is beautiful what you said about, oh yeah, we breathe even before we start any of our movements. This is fantastic. Second edition, that's going to be in there. Great. So maybe just one last time, just take a moment to sit and notice all the changes in the sensation of your hands, the sensations of your arm, and the sensation of how you're sitting. And maybe play after you've done that for a few moments, then play the same little ditty or the same little thing you played at the beginning of the lesson. Of course, keeping in the back of your mind, just as a memory, a kind of an echo, the feelings that you had in relation to the keys as you went through this lesson, and play again and see what has changed for you. Great. It looks very different. It's quite stunning to see it. Yeah. And let's have a moment just to share and to discuss your impressions, your questions, your observations about this whole experience, and how was it for you now to play the same piece that you played at the beginning of the lesson? What had
Well,
changed for
I
you?
found my wrist turning, wrist movement I never had before.
Lighter than it's ever been?
Well, it brought the wrist into sideways motion.
Ah, it started lateralizing itself.
Yeah, that just came in naturally. Yeah.
This is, yeah, because music goes laterally on the keyboard. The notes go up and down the keyboard. So it's entirely spontaneously you integrated the movement of the arm that we learned on one note into a musical complex, which is obviously going to be going laterally. Perfect. So the brain just did that for you because it had all the elements it needed to do that.
Yeah, I just want to insert a thing that I learned from my voice teacher. He just said, you don't, you don't, nobody teaches you how to sing. You teach yourself. And in this way, I mean, you're inviting us, giving us ways to experiment, but we find it, you know, we teach ourselves how to play. And
Yeah, which is exactly what Moshe said he was doing. He said, I do not teach, I create the conditions for learning. Yeah. How was it for you, Lilu?
you're muted. Yeah.
I just, yeah, so my hands are very small. I don't know if you can tell, they're like
Uh-huh.
baby hands.
There's
And
there's a whole thing about that in this piano somatics thing, where
is
the
there?
hand, even a small hand, stops feeling like a small hand. But anyway, we'll get to that later.
Well, I guess that would be my hope because I do have a problem getting from one end of the octave to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so then my wrist hurt, you know, I get tired faster. Maybe that's why I don't play as often. But so I'm looking forward to seeing if I just do that one little lesson, you know, with the raising and the lowering and maybe some of the pogo stick and the other one, the variations, like
Yeah,
then it's almost like stretching before working out.
that's
So
right. Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to seeing what the changes are going to be. And I definitely felt like it wasn't just my hands were involved. It
Yes.
felt like I was involved all the way up to here
Great.
and maybe even a little farther. I kept trying to feel this clavicle.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Well worth my time, sir.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure. And that thing about the clavicle, I didn't do it today, but sometimes I'll ask, you know, where does the arm end? And the arm ends at the shoulder. And then, of course, the clavicle is proximal to the shoulder. Like,
Yeah.
but if you look at the skeleton, where do you know where the arm ends in terms of skeletally? If we're speaking skeletally,
It's like right down here, isn't it?
no, no,
Or
no,
is
no,
it
no.
up here?
Skeletally. Okay, a better way of putting it is where is the arm attached to the torso?
Oh,
Where's
yeah.
the arm attached to the body? You know where it is?
Is it inside the, it's inside the joint, the shoulder joint.
That's so interesting. No.
It's actually
The shoulder blade is sliding free. The shoulder joint is sliding free. If I raise my shoulder like this, the whole shoulder, everything, the arm, shoulder blade, everything's coming away from the torso, from the ribs. Now where this movement here is rotating around this point right here. It's where the clavicle inserts into the sternum. That's the end of your arm. So here's the end of your right arm. Here is the end of your left arm. The two arms end about an inch or an inch and a half apart from each other.
Wow.
And so when you put your hand in your clavicle and you start feeling the movement of your clavicle, you're feeling your whole arm for the first time. And it was so great because we did it sensorially, so you could actually become aware. Oh. So now if you know that, oh my God, my arm it starts right here, then you'll be even more inclined to have this whole arm feeling when you play.
Yes,
the corollary for the hand, it's what?
Will come from here then,
That's
like
right.
the drive,
That's
the
right.
driver.
And then, of course, when you rock the pelvis like this and rock the pelvis like this, the pelvis is moving the spine, which is moving the sternum, and the sternum is moving the arms. So now your pelvis is intimately connected to the arms, so the movement of the on key. It becomes really the idea of my fourth book, Play the Piano with Your Whole Self. That's organically, physically true. It's not just a nice idea. And so we discover just how that's true.
Yeah, I'm going to want to watch one of those movies. I can't remember their names, but there's probably several great movies with imitation they were based on a pianist from long ago. I can't remember names, but I know I remember watching them play, and their whole body is involved. Fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, your whole arm was involved, and oh no, there was something else in my mind, but now it went away. Damn, what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, so the entire Pianimals book, the 8 sections, they deal with taking this initial experience of the breathing arm and then taking it and horizontalizing it and making it 3-dimensional, making it relate to all the movements all along up and down the keys rather than just moving through one particular key. So it's set up to gradually integrate more and more of this, so that again you were playing and you played differently without having decided to make that change. No, your sensory experience of yourself had been enriched, and therefore the brain had way more information to go on, and it spontaneously has this new relationship to the keyboard come into being.
I like what Amy said too. We teach ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm going to go teach myself. This is motivation.
Yeah.
Like everything we teach ourselves, don't we? Tennis, piano, guitar.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Well, it's been a pleasure. And these recordings are going to be around, so you'll be able to review this lesson. And of course, you're invited to come to the 8-week course, which is starting next week, and to let your friends know about it too. The more, the merrier. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Now, I'm just saying Maggie did put her email in the chat, and now I'm going to put my email in the chat, Fraser@AlanFraserInstitute.com. Did I type that correctly? I believe so. Yes. This is Amy direct message. No, I want this to go to everyone in the meeting. So that's my email, so you can get in touch with me if you need to. And
where's that YouTube? How do we search that, Alan?
let me
YouTube that you said you mentioned it at the beginning.
hold on a second.
YouTube of you doing. Do you remember it, Amy? Right when you got on, he was talking about that.
Yeah, what was it? I wanted to ask you to send a link.
That's what you meant by send us the
One of your
link.
teachers, was it?
look, I don't remember what I said, but look, here is the, hold on a second.
It's in
This
the,
is,
that part was being recorded.
okay,
Yeah,
this,
I think it was.
this, look, this is the link to my site where you can register for the event, the 8-week institute. And now there is a whole series of videos on YouTube, tutorials, which are like 2 minute. There's a 2 to 5 minute tutorial for each chapter of Pianimals. So there's 28 tutorials, and there they are. Okay. Then there is also oh yeah, I forgot to mention. There's also this one, Pianimals pointers. Where did everybody go? Oh, there you are. Pianimals pointers. I took. Some people like pictures. Some people are visual. So I didn't do all the chapters, but I did even like simpler versions of several of the chapters. Like you see now, instead of a whole page of instructions, it's just like little bullet points.
Oh, that was a good idea.
But I added photos. So, and some of the photos we took pains to. Some of the photos we added little arrows, directional arrows, so that you can see the lines of force, the trajectories going through the hand as you do this or that movement. And sometimes there's a series of photos so you can see the hand this is that monster movement where the hand starts flat and then very, very gradually just comes to a more pronounced arch. So I think there's 12 of the most pertinent Pianimals. Oh crap! I'm just trying to get the channel playlists. I wanted to get the there's pian. Oh, this is the wrong channel. Hold on a second. Ugh. Playlists. Where's my playlists? Library, your videos. Oops, something went wrong. Okay, you're gonna have to find it yourself. I don't. Something's not coming up. So I gave you a YouTube link to the 28 Pianimals tutorials, and there's also another YouTube link to another playlist, which is the Pianimals pointers tutorials. And apart from that, on YouTube, oh yeah, I remember what it was at the very, very beginning.
It was some guy.
Yeah, it was Kamal Gekic, my teacher.
Playing, teaching.
Playing in Montreal, and here it is. And this is a fun video because it's also got an interview. You will see me 35 years ago. Because CBC Radio and Television interviewed us about this problem that happened at the piano
Put the
competition.
link in the chat.
I just did.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah. So that's fun. It's a little bit of history. Yeah.
Awesome. I feel complete now that I got that, because that was a big question for me.
Great. I should put that on my site. I should put there's a little biography of Kamal and of me and how we met. I should really put a link, embed this in that page. That'd be fun. Yeah. Great. Well,